Well, the IPA, can I say to my viewers, have released a research paper. It's got a long title, but a significant title. It's called Australia's Debt Disaster, Estimating Interest Repayments on Federal Government Debt by 2030. And you heard Daniel say that estimate by 2030 is 89B for billion. $89 billion interest on the debt by 2030. Now, this is a consequence of Treasury revising its inflation rate estimate to 7.75%. That's inflation. So the Reserve Bank have warned they'll keep increasing interest rates, having got it hopelessly wrong last year. They'll keep increasing interest rates in order to suffocate inflation. So, Daniel, there are going to be dramatic increases in the cost of servicing the government debt, let alone, sadly, in the cost of servicing the mortgage.
Well, that's exactly right, Alan. And once the interest rates take off, the debt is very hard to get under control because the amount of obligations you owe keep going up and up. And the government needs to get a handle on spending. All debt, at the end of the day, is at some point caused by higher spending. And I think there's three things at a headline level the government at the federal level must do. The first is they should be cutting every government department's budget by 1% per year until the budget is back in the surplus. The second thing is immediately freeze all federal public service hiring and freeze the wages. And the third thing is the federal government needs to stop intervening in any role that should be the responsibility of state governments, whether that's in health, education, the environment. There's a range of areas where there's so much duplication and unnecessary spending. If you undertake those three reforms, that would be a very good start to getting the spending under control so then we can start paying down the debt.
Yeah, very good point. But you see, the people watching you tonight are saying, well, why are you telling me this? I've contributed nothing to the problem because almost every crisis we face is caused by disastrous government policies. But those people who are the architects of those policies are gone and the mess is left for others to clean up. So your research shows that if the cash rate, and we've got to say this again, set by the Reserve Bank, reaches 7% by 2030, annual interest repayments, you can't get your head around this, will reach $89 billion. Now, that's 4 times the current annual interest repayments. So you've put that, you just said it, but let's repeat it, Daniel. You put that into perspective. So those repayments on the debt, now Daniel just made this point, would be double the current annual defence budget, double the current annual education budget, 3 times the current budget for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and equivalent to the cost of purchasing a fleet of 6 nuclear submarines. I mean, how do we get government to... See, we're to blame for this a bit, mind you. I mean, come election time, no one says, listen, forget all that other crap you're talking about. I want you to tell me about debt, and I want you to give an assurance, if you want me to vote for you, that you're going to do something about retiring debt. We don't do that, do we?
No, you're right, Alan. It's an important point. There's a couple of messages I'd have here. The first is that we need to have political leadership that's in the long-term national interest. The last time we had that was in the 2014 Abbott budget, which undertook the politically difficult task of starting to get the budget back into shape by restraining spending, paying down the debt, and having a long-term capacity to get our budget under control. But since then, there's just been more and more spending. And then before that, we have to go right back to Howard and Costello. Don't forget, back in 1996, when Howard and Costello came into government, there was about $100 billion in debt. By the time they left government in 2007, that had all been paid down.
Gone.
And that was due to spending restraint spearheaded by Peter Costello in terms of looking for the national interest. As you say, there's always going to be sectional interests in our community that want more and more spending. And the lazy way of doing that as a government is simply pay off those people through more money. But as we saw with Howard and Costello and with the first Abbott budget, what you have to do is ignore those sectional interests, appeal to the national interest to say, as a nation, we must undertake some kind of sacrifice in order to ensure that future generations can enjoy the standard of living that we have all enjoyed. But that requires leadership, it requires courage and vision.